So I'm going to talk about numbers with you guys, and I'm sitting with two CPAs, there's some financial people over here, so take it easy on me here, and the report I'm going to show you wasn't mine, so I take no ownership of it, so there you go. But I'm going to talk to you about Lewis and Clark. It's economic impact study we had done, and really the impact Lewis and Clark has on the community and for our stakeholders in terms of taxpayers and students and the community in general. But first off, who am I? Why am I here, right? So I'm Dennis Krieb. I am married to Rachel. I have two daughters. Abby is a freshman at Lewis and Clark. That was not a good conversation, by the way, I gotta tell you. She was going to Michigan until I told her, no, you're going to Lewis and Clark because I'm not gonna send you to Michigan and spend all that money. So she's there, but she actually is glad she's there, so it's working out really well. So Abby's a freshman at Lewis and Clark. Gabby is a fifth grader at Our Lady Queen of Peace School, and she can make a lot of slime. Always making slime. Okay.
Must be a girl thing right now.
Yeah,
It drives me up a wall. Pick up your slime. Anyway, those are the two girls. What do I like to do? I was talking to Corey. I was a runner, but those days are gone after knee surgery, so I had to X that one out. I like to read, I like to write, and I like to noodle on the bass guitar. My oldest daughter, Abby asked me if I was having a midlife crisis with the bass guitar. I told her no, just something to keep me busy. So what do I do at Lewis and Clark? Well, I'm the Director of Institutional Research and Library Services. I've never met anybody who does what I do in terms of mixing institutional research and the library. I was a library director for many years, and then I was invited to take on institutional research. I declined the invitation, and then I got a call from the president. I was invited again to take on institutional research. I accepted the invitation the second time. So institutional research is really looking at numbers and looking at metrics in terms of how the school is doing with student success, accreditation. So I do that, and I also do the library background. I went to SIUE, with the University of Missouri, and with the University of Nebraska. So that's kind of a snapshot of who I am. Okay. So, I'm going to talk about the economic impact study, but I thought we'd play a game first. I like games. I'm not seeing any heads nod here, so we in the games or not, all right?
We don't like to review today.
We're tired.
It's not
All right,
ready
you're
yet.
tired. Well, we did this after lunch. This is not a good time to do a presentation. All right, so I thought what I'd do is just play a game with you guys in terms of, I'll show you a number, and then you tell me what you think that number represents. The clue is, all the numbers are associated with community colleges and or higher education. So I'll display you a number, and then you tell me what you think the number represents, okay?
Okay.
Here we go then. 62%. Anybody have an idea what that number might represent? 62%.
Students outside the area of Madison County.
That's a really good guess, Rhonda. That's close.
Percent of freshmen in junior college.
Way to go.
I'm sorry, I had a question.
Percent of freshmen in junior college.
That's a close one too, not it. Any other takers on 62%?
Percent of kids get an associate's degree.
No, that's not a good, I wish it was that high, honestly. It's not that high. Okay, let's show them the answer. So that's part-time. So most of our students are part-time students. And that's just really for most community colleges. So 62% of community college students nationally are enrolled part-time. So that's 62. Okay, next one. 36%. You guys are trying to make it up. I knew you guys would do that, that's why I threw them up there. Okay. 36%. Anybody have any thoughts on that number, what that might represent?
Hold on.
That would be a good guess, yes.
The number of people who wore that suit when
Still has that much.
Still do? Okay. Any other takers on 36%?
Transfer students.
Transfer
They're going
students.
to transfer to a four-year school.
Okay, there are good ones here. All right, what is it?
Oh.
Those are first-generation students. So many of our students, parents, have never gone to college. So 36%. All right. $351.
Cost for 130 years ago.
Yeah.
Cost per
Cost per
credit
credit
hour.
hour.
Days, right, yeah.
Cost per credit hour.
Cost per credit hour, that's a really good guess. That'd be more than we are, what's that?
Books.
No, books are a lot more than that.
That's book.
One, yeah.
One book, you're right, one book, you're close on that. The other takers on 351. All right, hearing none. That's the average monthly student loan payment for students
Oh, wow.
from ages 20 to 30 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, 56%. What that number represents nationally for community colleges.
Is that the transfer? The transfer to a four-year?
That's another good guess, Ron, but it's not it. It's
Those on,
a good guess,
Do you have
though.
answers
how
over
about
there?
those on scholarship?
The right answers.
No,
Financially.
no. Good, those are very good, though. You guys aren't too far off.
Emails.
I think he just won a prize.
No, he does not win anything.
Give him a bell, maybe, I don't know, that's something, that's outstanding. So that's actually more women attend community colleges than men.
Give them $1 back.
Okay, I think we have one more, or maybe 20 or less.
The age.
Students in classrooms.
Class size, yeah.
Okay, class size.
He said it back there too.
Age.
Yeah.
You got one right. Woo-hoo!
Yeah.
You
You
got
guys
one
are doing very well,
right.
actually.
Gotta go buy a lottery ticket.
So that's the average community college class size, or smaller. And then we have $20,707 on this one. Cost of an associate's degree, that's not correct, a good guess. Any other thoughts on this figure?
Starting salary of graduates.
That's another good guess, not it though. Okay, I'm not hearing any more guesses, so we'll show them the answer. So this is the money saved by Illinois students that earn their first 60 credit hours at a community college. So it is a money saver. Hence my daughter going to Lewis and Clark is a prime example of that, even though she didn't want to go, but now she likes it. So, okay, I think that's all the trivia we have on the, oh, by the way, as a librarian, we don't want to plagiarize, so those are my sources. So just for full disclosure, okay, we've done that, we're good on that end. So I think we're ready to jump into the actual economic impact study. So we had this commission back in 2014-15, we have these done every 3 years. And this is really just to look at two things, and this won't take long. Economic impact of Lewis and Clark and the return on investment for those who use Lewis and Clark or are part of Lewis and Clark. So yeah, I think we're ready to jump in on this thing. So one thing is, we like to say we are a maker. Lewis and Clark Community College is a maker. This is my daughter, loves cookies, and she's making the cookies. So Lewis and Clark is a maker. It's not a taker. So that's the other way in the cookies. So Lewis and Clark, when you look at it economically, it creates more, does more than it brings in. So that's sort of the analogy here we use with my daughters. Okay. All right, so who did this study for us? So the company is called MC, Economic Modeling Specialists International. They're out in Moscow, Idaho. These folks strictly do economic modeling for higher ed, for the most part. So they do a lot of this work. All the major universities use them, and so do we. So they know what to look for, they know how to model, and basically we give them our data, and they look at our data, and then they find their own data that's appropriate to our region, and then they produce this report for us based upon their models. Okay. So about Lewis and Clark, and you guys probably all know this, but we'll just go through it. This is our district up there, so we are a district. So those are the counties that connect to our district. I think there's officially 7, but 2 of them are just touching us barely. It's really 5. Our total gross, the total gross regional product for that region is $7.8 billion. Excuse me, 95,000 jobs total. These figures represent the average earnings, midpoint earning based upon education. So, for example, if you have a bachelor's degree, you're making $45,900 at the midpoint of your career. So just to give you an idea of the impact of education for our region by education and salaries. If you have questions, by all means.
What's the midpoint considered? Like 10 years or?
I'm sorry.
What's the midpoint considered in someone's career?
It's in the model, and honestly, I'd have to pull out the methodology, but it's probably based upon average years of a work, you know, you work 30 years and probably take it to the midpoint. Good question, I don't have it off the top of my head. But they factored in sort of the midpoint range. Okay. So about Lewis and Clark, we served 11,377 credit students, so those are students getting credit for either a degree or to transfer. 671 employees. 8% of our students come from outside that region that you saw on the map. So we have 8% coming from outside. We do serve a lot of non-credit students, over 3,000 through community and corporate education. Payroll's $29 million, and then 93% of the students remaining in the region after they leave college. After they leave Lewis and Clark, 93% stay in our region. They don't leave it, so they sort of set their roots here. Okay, the study itself does two things: economic impact of Lewis and Clark, how the college affects the local economy, and then an investment analysis. This is scary with all these investment people and CPAs and such in the room. Looks at the costs and benefits to determine the ROI for Lewis and Clark stakeholders. Okay, so the operations spending impact. So payroll and this ripple effect that payroll has in the region adds an additional $32 million to the economy, and it supports, according to MC, 754 jobs. The student spending impact. So for those students that stayed in or came in from outside the district to come and live here and go to school, they're spending money doing things in the area. MC factors that to be around $5 million in added regional income and supporting about 126 jobs. Dairy Queen being one of those across the street. And then the alumni impact, which is the biggie here. Those are the alums that went to Lewis and Clark and stayed in the area and that are working in the area, spending money, paying taxes. That's a number of $332.4 million to added regional income. So those are sort of the three buckets that MC's looking at in terms of the economic impact. So the operations, this kind of gets into the weeds a bit here in terms of the number of employees, 671, payroll's $29 million. So if you look at all this ripple effect with these folks working at the college and spending money in the community, that's adding an additional $32 million to the area, our district, and again, 754 jobs supported with the operations part of this. Okay, so the student spending. So the students that are coming outside to come to Lewis and Clark, which 8% do, and those that would have gone away, like my daughter, who's with me now, and she's spending her money on, how does she like to spend her money on? Cookie dough, right? She's buying that at the local Schnucks. Anyway, the students that would have went away, that stayed, and those that came from outside, who are coming here to go to Lewis and Clark, those represent, they say, $5 million in additional regional income, or about 126 jobs, if you look at it in terms of workforce. So that's the student spending impact. So the alums are the big fish here. So these students and former students that stay in the area and work and spend their money and set their roots and raise their families, that's the real impact. And you can see that's a really big number, $332 million and nearly 6,000 jobs. So the alums really have a huge impact in terms of the regional economy here.
Did you ask if there are any alums in the audience?
Do we have any alums in here?
Any-
I recognize my old baseball coach back there, Joe. Make him feel old. He was a coach of mine, believe it or not. It's hard to believe, isn't it? Great, so there you go. You guys are looking proof of the impact of Lewis and Clark. So folks that come here and go to school at Lewis and Clark, they stay, and then they spend their money. So total impact, if you look at this in aggregate here, 4.7% of the gross regional product of the area that we talked about, those 5 counties, That's what Lewis and Clark represents in terms of GRP. 361.4 million added to total income, so that's what Lewis and Clark is generating off of those three buckets, I guess you could call them. But roughly 7,000 total jobs added to the region. This kind of gives you an idea of what the jobs are, if you want to kind of look at this in terms of where they're at, where they're landing, in terms of the workforce. Okay, investment analysis, students, so this is a way to look at, okay, so the student puts in, where do they put it in? Well, students put in $57.7 million in terms of tuition, supplies, the opportunity cost. They could have went and began working somewhere else and not go to school, so they're giving up those salaries to go to school and be poor for 4 years or 2 years. So the opportunity costs, MCC's got to be about $58 million, but the return for them is going to be $330 million in terms of the higher future earnings they would get, which they factor to be a 5.7% benefit cost ratio or a 19.7% rate of return. So this is kind of the skin they put in, what they get out, and then the rate of return on that. So they look at students in this research. Taxpayer perspective, so taxpayers put in $41.5 million, that's state and local funding for the school. That number has changed, I got to tell you though, because this report was done in 2015. Our school's gotten literally no money from the state. So this has been, that number's really a bit inflated, but we'll go with it, $41.5 million. But the return on the other end, future tax revenue, so these local governments and other agencies will recover, MC says, about $134 million based upon taxes and so forth. Lost benefit cost ratio of 3.2 or a rate of return of 9.1% based upon money coming in and money coming back out to those and the impact. And then the last one is the social perspective. This one's a little fuzzy for me, I got to tell you. It's hard to get my head around with how they measure this, but you know, they have their model. But basically what they're looking at is, in a nutshell, if you go to college, you probably won't end up in prison or needing money from the state or the federal government in some way. You won't be a taker. You'll be more self-sufficient. So you look at all these sort of social perspective costs and they come up with a number of 1.4 billion. It's a big number, but that's the number they've modeled it at. So that comes out to be a benefit cost ratio of 12.8. They couldn't do a rate of return on that one. So that's a way to look at this as sort of an investment analysis with these three different kind of stakeholders, students, taxpayers, and then society in general. Okay, so sort of the thumbnail overview, 370 million total income supported in the region. For students, we think we represent a 19.7% rate of return. Nearly 7,000 jobs are supported in the region through Lewis and Clark and their alums, which is a rate of return to taxpayers at 9.1%, and then we represent 4.7% of the region's GRP. I think that is the report, so there you go.